Okay, so the topic of the speech is manned and unmanned space exploration. So to start out, due to some grammatical errors, it has left the major claim open to multiple interpretations. So for the purpose of my refutation speech, I will interpret it how I believe would be the best way to state the opponent's belief. So their major claim was that there have been no new exploration discoveries because space programs are underfunded. Their secondary claims are that manned space exploration needs to be funded to gain experience for future long-range missions. Their second secondary claim is space exploration needs money to give us the data needed to understand conditions on other planets. And the third one being NASA also needs money to have scientific breakthroughs on their research. And for the purpose of refuting this speech, I'll assume that the opponent replied that these programs need more money. My negating claim is that space programs are not underfunded, thus we do not need to pour more money into it. So for their first claim that manned space programs need more money for future long-range missions, the opponent stated that, or brought up the Apollo program as well as the ISS station and how each of them were able to be benefited from the previous programs, the Gemini program and the space station MER. However, they only briefly mentioned how future Mars manned missions would benefit from using information gathered by previous programs, and never really mentioned what previous programs would be beneficial for these Mars manned missions. And in fact, according to Mark M. Cohan, who is an architect and aerospace engineer, the possibility of humans going on a mission to Mars is, even in the far future, unattainable. For 5 factors that he calls the 5 showstoppers that would prevent us from being able to reach Mars or being able to sustain ourselves there. The 5 factors are hypogravity, radiation, the need for regenerative or bioregenerative life support, the dust on Mars, planetary protection, and planetary protection, which is in regards to contamination. And each of these simply sums up how we are unable to both reach Mars and able to live there as well. In refutation to the second secondary claim, being space exploration needs more money to give us more information on other planets, the opponent stated that NASA does not have enough money to organize or does have enough money to program for the Mars Rover program. And that kind of proves my claim that some space programs are, in fact, not underfunded. And on top of this, there are other issues here on Earth that we should be putting our money into instead of more into space exploration. And if we can't solve our problems that we have here on Earth, how do we expect to properly address the ones that we will come across in space? And the refutation to the third secondary claim is in regards to the opponent stating that NASA is not receiving enough money, but they never said exactly how much money NASA is receiving. And according to the NASA website, in 2007, they received almost $17 billion. And that in itself is a lot of money, especially if NASA only spent about $3.9 billion of that budget on future space exploration. And on top of that, the budget since then, since 2007, has rose to $17.7 billion for the 2013 budget. The opponent also mentioned a number of technical advances or technological advances that we have gained from space travel, like the handheld vacuum and memory foam. But however, these ideas easily came about while remaining within the past budget, which in the past 5 years has only increased by $0.7 billion. So the amount of money we are putting into space programs now is sufficient to continue and advance our knowledge of space. However, there are a lot of mysteries out in space that we dream of discovering, but cannot due to many environmental limitations and economic obligations to our own planet. Thank you.
All right, well, the subject's identified very clearly, and I think that you did a good job trying to outline what the claims were and give it a structure as well. I think you actually put it into a stronger organizational structure and with clear declarative sentences than we might have gotten otherwise. And I think that the inference that you've made about what the advocate was actually talking about is a very legitimate interpretation of the information that's being presented. I like the kind of response to the future long-range plans, arguing that there's not really much reference in the advocate's argument to what those future plans would be, and then coming up with a counterclaim that suggests that trips to Mars, for instance, for humans are practically impossible, and you're giving us a good criteria on that, so we shouldn't be using that as a means of judging those future missions. The transition to the second point was also very clear. The notion that we have adequate funding on this point is sort of unclear. You basically say, well, we've got the Mars rover, so clearly we had enough money for that sort of thing. And then there's sort of this value claim that says we've got issues on Earth to pay attention to. There's not really much discussion of this. There's no counter evidence to show that those would benefit from the money that NASA's getting, or that the money that NASA's getting is being wasted, and therefore we could have utilized it more effectively in some other way. So I think that point is a little bit underdeveloped, although in the end, in the summary, I think it does tie in nicely with the general philosophy that you've come up with. On the third point, the actual money for NASA, $17 billion increasing to $17.7 billion over a 6-year period. I know 17.7 is more than 17 billion, and for you and I, that would be a substantial increase. But over a 6-year period for government programming, that doesn't sound like it's particularly substantial. I think you might want to point out, for example, the extensiveness of NASA's spending, what kinds of projects they are currently engaged in, show us how they continue to do development with the money that they have available, and then come back to your argument that says, look, if we had additional money, they'd be blowing it on trying to go to Mars, which is an unobtainable concept. And I think that that's maybe the way to put those points together. Like I said at the end, I thought you had a good summary of your points, and you do lay in a couple of those arguments that didn't get fully developed, but they do make it sound like you've got a nice punch with the summary point, and it's a lot clearer how you feel about those issues. All right. Thank you.